Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to another episode of Manifesting Muslimah. I'm your host Zara Pedersen, and in today's episode we're going to talk about destiny, specifically with regards to health. This is a topic that was suggested by one of you listeners out there, so thank you very much, which is actually kind of funny to say because it was kind of like a thing that I had mentioned in a previous episode like long ago, and I'd forgotten all about it. And I was like, in an episode, I apparently was like, oh, if you want an episode on this, just let me know and I'll make that. And alhamdulillah, one of you listened to that episode and you were like, actually, yes, please. So this is like your little notion, little tidbit, little whatever you want to call it. Like if you are listening to any of my previous episodes and I go, hey, this could be a topic that maybe if you guys want to hear about it, let me figure out how to speak. If you want to hear more in it, I can make an episode on that, and I haven't done it. Reach out to me and let me know, hey, you said in this episode that you could talk into that specific subject or whatever, but I haven't seen anything about it. Is that something that you still want to do? And then I can record that for you guys. I am notoriously good at forgetting everything I've said the moment I've just said it. I don't know why. I just do that. Even in my coaching, I often tell the girls in the membership, like, take notes, because they're like, oh, you said something just a minute ago. I'm like, I don't know. I've already forgot. Like, rewind. I don't know what I say. I say it and it just comes out in that moment. And so I just allow the message to be what it is. And then I kind of just move on. It's a good thing sometimes. It can also be a bad thing. So if there is something in the past, in any of my previous episodes that I've alluded to or I've mentioned, and you're just like, hey, Zara, I kind of want to know more about that, do as this one listener did and reach out. Let me know, because it could be that I will sit down and record an episode on that thing that you wanted to hear about, as I am doing now for this wonderful listener. So thank you so much. So this specific episode is about how health complications can be a part of your destiny, and perhaps speaking into that a little bit more. And I love this question because I think it's very appropriate for us to have these kinds of conversations around destiny and our health, and especially the types of health complications that are destined for us versus the ones that our lifestyle, so to speak, create for us. Because there are, the kind of roads that we choose ourselves based on free will and what we choose to do with it, how we move our body, what we choose to eat, if we choose to smoke, drink, any of those things that will have effects on our health that may not necessarily be predestined. And then there are things that Allah was like, this is going to happen for you regardless of what you do. This is just something that you're going to have to deal with, whether it be genetic, you were born with it, an accident happened, and as a result of that accident, you now have to deal with some complications health-wise and so on. And that could be very much like a predestined health situation. So just to make sure that we are on the same boat here, the ones that I'm specifically going to talk into today are the ones that I want to say are like destined for you. And I will use myself as an example and kind of elaborate a little bit further on that. In 2006, I was 19 years old. I just turned 19 years old, and I was diagnosed with stage 4 lymphatic cancer. I think I had Hodgkin's lymphoma. I can't remember if it's Hodgkin's or non-Hodgkin's. Either way, it's a while ago. It's like nearly 20 years ago at this point. Okay, so excuse me if I forget the details, and it sounds so strange. I never thought that I would reach a point in my life where I would even forget whether it was one type of cancer or the other. SubhanAllah, time passes and we forget. But I received this diagnosis and I was terrified that it was because I had done something. Like I was asking the doctors, like, why did I get it? Is it something that I do? Is it my lifestyle? Is it something that I'm ingesting? And it was very much relayed to me at the time that there's no real reason why these things, like this type of cancer diagnosis, shows up. It kind of just does. It doesn't have any necessary prerequisite in lifestyle. It's just something that happens to some people. And it was very difficult for me at the time to kind of find comfort and ease in that, because it made me feel like, oh, I don't know what I should safeguard myself against future wise. Alhamdulillah, after that I have found my way to Islam, and I'm doing what I do today, and I've gained a little bit of appreciation and understanding of the way that Allah does certain things. And I've now come to understand that it wasn't about what I did before I got this cancer diagnosis. It was that the cancer diagnosis and going through that experience and facing my mortality to that extent, or at least that what it felt like at the time for me with a stage 4 cancer diagnosis, was imperative for my development as a Muslim. It was imperative for my development as a person and as a servant of Allah, as a slave of Allah in this dunya, because the experience helped build a lot of what I have become today and my outlook on the world today, and even the way that I am now able to, alhamdulillah, help other people. And a lot of those things came as a result of having that experience at 19 years old, and then the subsequent 5 years of remission. I don't know what it's like today, but back then I had to have a 5-year remission. Maybe that's just because I was in stage 4, or I don't know, but I had 5 years of remission, and then having to go through, after the 5-year remission, going through therapy, a lot of therapy, survivor's guilt, trying to make sense of what had happened, and really try to come to terms with, okay, so that just happened. You know, it was like the whole diagnoses and treatment and follow-ups and everything. You know, it was 6 years of my life where that was very much at the forefront, and there was a very real fear, very real, very visceral fear of death, but not in fear of death in sort of like, oh no, what if I die? It was sort of more, the perspective of it was more, oh, but I didn't really get a chance to live. And not live in like, oh, just doing everyday things. It was like the regret of, I could have done better with my time. And it very much has changed a lot for me in terms of the way that I now today live my life and the way that my outlook is on life. It very much humbled me. And I suppose also as a 19-year-old who at that time had strayed quite a bit from Islam, and it took a while even after my diagnoses and my journey to find my way back to Islam again. But I see it as a very imperative, very important journey in my life to becoming Muslim and experiencing Islam, experiencing Islam in the way that I do today. Let me just, so unprofessional of me, not having put my phone on silent, to the way that I experience Islam today, the way that I have become a Muslim. And as I said before, the way that I am now able to speak to some of you guys and coach and help and guide simply because of that experience. Now, this is just like a part of my story, and I'm just sort of like trying to sum it up into, you know, like quick bite-sized information. But it's very much, to me, a question of that for me felt like a very predestined thing. That had to happen for me. It was very important that Allah put that in my story, in my narrative here in this dunya, because I had to learn something very specific from it that I couldn't have learned had I not gone through that. And this is where health issues, health complications can become very important. I don't know if you guys just heard that. They just started drilling next door. Inshallah khair, they're not going to do it too much, but I can't really do anything about it. We're just going to have to go with it. But inshallah, it won't be too annoying to listen to. So we can look at health complications as one of those things that Allah has put them there because they're there to teach us something. These are predestined. So it can, as I said, be that you were born with something genetically, that you inherited something from your parents, that something happened at an age that you had no control over it. And as a result, you now have health complications, autoimmune diseases. It could be a number of things. And there can be a lot of health issues and health scares. And instead of looking at it, while I can appreciate that it can be very difficult in this dunya, in the 3D reality, to find energy to do things, perhaps because of health issues, find motivation, find that optimism and things like that, and to live a quote unquote normal life despite these health issues, we sometimes have to change the perspective from where we're coming at these health issues from. If Allah needed you to be born without legs, He did that for a reason. That is not by happenstance. That's not because Allah thought it would be funny. It's not because Allah was bored. It was because there's a specific reason for it. And we can quite often, as humans in this dunya, forget that nothing is by chance. Nothing just happens because Allah made a mistake. It happens because there's a reason and a purpose. And because we forget these things, we can get stuck in sort of a sense of hopelessness. Why do I have to have this struggle? Why do I have to go through this? Why did Allah give me this battle and not the other people? Why couldn't I just have like everybody else? And as a result, we're looking at it from a perspective where the thing that we're going through in this dunya, that is the test, is now no longer a blessing in disguise. It becomes the struggle, like the one that makes us move further away from Allah, potentially even, astaghfirullah, right? And that is the worst thing that can happen, is this sort of like, I'm going to put myself in such a victim mentality that I can't even appreciate that Allah might have a bigger plan for me than what I might immediately think about. And for some people, that thing might be easy to recognize. Some people might have a really easy time to recognize, no, this is why, because I'm meant to do sports on a Paralympic level. Paralympic? Is that what it's called? I'm thinking it's Paralympic. I'm not a sports type of girl. Isn't it called the Paralympics? Like if you're missing legs and you still want to do like the Olympics. I think that's the word. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I've never really been an Olympics kind of girl. But maybe it's because you're supposed to compete at that level and you're supposed to inspire other people to do the same. And maybe it's because I don't know, there could be a number of reasons that I couldn't even possibly begin to fathom or get into. But the point of it all is just that sometimes some people get to that point rather quickly. They're like, this is why I see now that there's like a blessing in it. And if I, instead of trying to deny the hand that I've been dealt by Allah, I just embrace it and I run with it, then I get to experience this whole other side of it that is actually benefiting me and moving me closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as I said again, this is not necessarily because I'm saying, that's easy, just do that. Trust and believe it. As I said, I didn't find Islam again until, I didn't revert until a little while after, quite a while after, even after my cancer diagnosis. I was well out of my remission time period as well. I've had the diagnosis while I was in every sense of the word a kafir. I didn't live as a Muslim. I was out sinning all the time, and my way of dealing with the I don't know, the only word that comes to mind is trauma, but I don't want to call it trauma. The realization of what I was going through was by going out and binge drinking every weekend and wallowing in my own sort of victimhood. So, I wasn't praying to Allah. It didn't at the time move me closer to Allah, which also at that time made me feel even more like, what is this for? And it wasn't until quite a while after everything had happened and I was sort of had time to reflect and sit with it that I managed to understand it has actually changed entirely who you are today as a person. But I would never have gotten to that point if I had continued to look at it only as I was a victim of something. This is something that now I'm like, poor me, and I can understand and I can appreciate that the cancer diagnosis, because some of you are sitting out there with like chronic illnesses. So it's not something like, Zara, it's easy for you to say because you got out of it, you were on the other side. But meanwhile, some of us are like stuck in it, and we probably have to deal with this for the rest of our lives, right? I understand that there is a massive difference in that, but even in that, there is probable blessings. It's not even probable. Everything Allah gives us comes with blessings. We're the ones who have a tendency to tarnish it. But when we understand that everything is from Allah, especially the way that we're built, especially with things like diseases that we're not responsible for, meaning, it's not that we smoked and got lung cancer or something. It's not that we decided to take on an extreme sport and got into an accident and lost an arm. These are things that happened perhaps because of factors that we couldn't control, that were out of our control, right? We need to appreciate that is because Allah specifically chose us to go through that. And while it is difficult for us in this dunya, there is blessings in it one way or another. And sometimes, as I said, those blessings are easy to see, they're easy to find. And other times we need to do some work, some real work to really get in there and see that for ourselves and experience those blessings for ourselves. The reason why I'm saying illnesses that we're not, or health concerns that we're not responsible for, is because we also can choose. We have free will, so we choose if we want to start smoking, if we want to take drugs, if we want to live a healthy lifestyle, if we want to move our body, if we want to do something extreme with our bodies that carries a potential risk, and so on and so forth, which can derive from it certain health concerns, right? If we eat too much sugar and we don't control our sugar intake, we can get diabetes, not type 1, but we can get type 2, which is very much determined by our lifestyle. Excuse me, now my former life as a PT and nutritionist is coming up here, but that is very much something that isn't necessarily predestined for us. This is something that we have brought on ourselves by the choices that we have taken, or even the choices that we have not taken, okay? And these are slightly different. This is, I have chosen a road in my life, and as a result, Allah has said, well, if you choose that road, these are certain things that you might, then have to deal with, but you don't have to, because at any moment you have that free will to exercise to help you go in a different direction. And because of that, these are not the kind of decisions or illnesses that I am sort of referring to in this video, because it's not as predestined as the other ones. It's very much based on our free will and how we choose to exercise it, okay? While there can definitely be certain things like in having type 2 diabetes and potentially, reversing it or something, that you learn something from it and get on the other side, and that may still fuel some stuff for you in that sense, it's still a path that you chose, whether consciously or subconsciously, that is still your decisions that led you to that place, potentially. It's obviously different if you're like a child and your mom and dad keep feeding you sugar, and as a result you develop type 2 diabetes before you've had a chance to really make your own decisions. Okay, completely different thing, and that would then be something more like a predestined experience that you'd have to go through. I hope you can understand the differences in the two scenarios that I'm trying to build here. I want to make sure that you understand that when I'm saying predestined, it is the things that we cannot necessarily control. The other ones we have some more control over, which also usually means that we can also prevent it to some extent, right? But the ones that are predestined, we couldn't prevent it even if we tried. So regardless of how healthy I was up until I was 19, I wouldn't have been able to prevent that stage 4 cancer diagnosis. That was destined for me to be that way, because Allah knew that the impact of that experience had to change me. It could make me go in one way or another way, and alhamdulillah, I think I chose the right way, but who knows? Allahu a'lam, he's the only one who knows, but he knew that had to happen. So it wasn't like I could make decisions and work around it and try and manipulate time and space and experience so that didn't happen. That was going to happen. It was going to happen. And that is the kind of things that I'm referring to. So if you're sitting out there and you're like, but I couldn't control this, there was nothing that I could have done, it just was a thing, I've just got these health issues, and even when I try to look after myself and whatever, these health issues seem to continuously find me, that could very well mean those things are predestined for you. Allah wants you to go through these things, and it's not a bad thing. And I really want you, all of us, really to understand that it's not a bad thing to go through these things. That is just the way that Allah has decided to test us. One of the ways that Allah has decided to test us. He has decided to test every single one of us in many different ways. And for some of us, it is through an ailing health. Is that the way to say it? Ailing health? Like not a great health? Ailing? I feel like that's a word, but I don't know if I'm using it correctly. For some of us, it's through our health. It's the struggles with our health so that we can appreciate our physical body and our physical space in a different way that somebody whose main struggle in this dunya could be wealth. Even it could be our partners. It could be the country we're living in. It could be war, famine, in many different ways. We're all being tested in many different ways. And for some of us, it is through our health, and specifically the lack of good health. But don't look at it in a bad way. It's Allah as so famously overquoted, absolutely everywhere. We can never be overquoted because it's in the Quran, so quoted more and more and more, of course, but Allah will never burden a soul beyond more than it can bear. So the fact that you're going through this means that Allah knows that this is specifically for you because you're the one who can carry it. And that doesn't mean that you can't have bad days with it. It doesn't mean that you can't struggle from time to time with it, but it does mean that you're the one who has to carry it because you're the one who can take success from it. You're the one who can make success of it. You're the one who will derive good from it. And if he had given it to somebody else who couldn't bear it, they potentially could lose everything from it. Their entire faith, their deen, their iman, right? So it's a good thing that you're the one who has to carry it because Allah knows that you can carry it. It's possible for you to carry it and you can do it well. And so he said, I will give it to you because I know you're going to do good with it. But in doing good with it, we're the ones who have to remind ourselves that we have to make sure that we're looking at it from a correct perspective. It's not about victim mentality. You can feel that from time to time, absolutely, when you're going through difficult times, right? You can feel sorry for yourself from time to time. You can, be stressed and sad and anxious about it from time to time, but it's important that you don't live there. You don't stay in that perspective, but that you continuously move it back to, but Allah has decided. And because Allah has decided, there is abundance and rizq in this for me, even if I don't see it right now, and then derive patience from that place. All right, my darling, that is what I had to say on this topic. I hope that it answered some of the questions that some of you might have had around this topic, especially you who requested this specific episode. I hope that I could do you justice on it. And I hope that I said some things that potentially I didn't say when I kind of got into that whole topic in that previous episode that you mentioned. Thank you again so very much for reaching out and suggesting this episode and reminding me that I had said, hey, I can do an episode on this in the future if you would like. And for the rest of you, again, take a page out of this listener's book and send me a message over on Instagram at Manifesting Muslimah if you have any suggestions for future topics, or just want to say hi, or just want to leave me some feedback on what you think about the podcast, the new setting, all of that good stuff. Inshallah, it'll be this next chapter of the podcast will be great. Inshallah, there'll be a lot of abundance with it for myself and for you, and the new episodes that I am recording and preparing for you will bring you all the benefit that you are hoping to get from each and every single one of them, inshallah. Ameen. My darling, I'm going to love you and leave you right here. I hope to see you in next week's episode, inshallah. But until then, my darling friend, please don't forget to live in love.